our April 28th meeting. Commissioners need to take action on that, so I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve those minutes.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimous. And with that, we will move on to item 3, which is our topic of discussion for today, Susquehanna Area Regional Airport Authority. And we have, our guests are with us. So I'll leave it up to you folks to figure out how you want to run your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll kick things off here. My name is Tim Edwards. I'm the Executive Director with the Susquehanna Area Regional Airport Authority. And the purpose of today's briefing is to provide a quick update, a brief update on the status of the airport authority and to answer any questions we may have. It's been, I believe, quite some time since we've actually had an in-person meeting with the Cumberland County Commissioners. And we were hoping today was going to be an in-person meeting as well. It's originally scheduled that way, but I guess as we all know, with the COVID issue, sometimes things change quickly. So back to the virtual format. So again, thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to our story. We do have, I do want to recognize before I get started, our Cumberland County appointees to the Airport Authority Board. First is Mr. Jim Pelsel, who is currently the board chair, the chair of the Susquehanna Area Regional Airport Authority. We also have Mr. Don Diceway. I don't know if Mr. Diceway was able to join us this afternoon. And also Mr. Eric Hume. And I did not get a reply from Eric as to whether he would be able to join us this afternoon or not. Also from Delta Development Group out of Mechanicsburg, we have Rebecca Burke. We work very closely with her in Delta Development with regard to some of the funding issues that we'll be discussing in a couple minutes. And Maggie McGann, I don't know if Maggie's on the call or will be on the call today or not, but that's who we have representing the Airport Authority. So just quickly, I guess I need to ask, do you have copies of my presentation, or is there a...
We all have copies in here. We have copies in here.
You all have copies?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Very good. Well, I'll start with the very beginning. Just a quick summary of the Airport Authority. As you all know, we're a multi-municipal authority that manages, oversees, and administrates the Operation Harrisburg International Airport, 3 general aviation facilities in central Pennsylvania. The other 3, of course, Capital City Airport, Gettysburg Regional Airport, and Franklin County Regional Airport. And I'll have a little bit more on them a couple slides down the line. All 4 of the airports are part of the national plan of airport system. So we are eligible to receive federal grants for capital projects under what's called the Airport Improvement Program. And again, as you know, the Airport Authority is represented by our local municipalities and counties, including Dauphin County, Cumberland County, York County, City of Harrisburg, City of York, Fairview Township, and Lower Swatara Township. Total of 15 members on the board, so it is, by most standards, a fairly large board of directors. Looking specifically at Harrisburg International Airport, with regard to airline activity, we have 5 airlines that include American Airlines, excuse me, United Airlines, Delta, Allegiant Airlines, and Frontier Airlines, providing service, nonstop service to 15 destinations and hundreds of connecting points. And connecting points are basically through our gateway hubs, which you get 2 nonstops out of Harrisburg, including Charlotte, Atlanta, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Boston, all accessed nonstop out of Harrisburg. During normal times, we generate nearly $8 million just on parking revenue, which allow us to provide $725,000, maybe a little bit more, in taxes to the Middletown Area School District, Lower Swatara Township, and the Borough of Middletown. Now, of course, last year, 2020, as with everything, was not a normal year. We went from a record in 2019 of 762,000 enplanements, which were passenger boardings, to about 315,000 enplanements last year. So we went from a record in 2019 to another record, which we do not want to repeat in 2020. This year, we're pacing to be, finish the year about 60% total of our 2019 enplanement activity. So we are seeing a bit of a recovery. It's been slow, but nonetheless, it's trending in the right direction, and we're very happy with that. Additionally, Harrisburg International is home to more than 60 companies, employing approximately 1,700 full and part-time employees. We handle approximately 50,000 aircraft operations, which is a takeoff for landing, and a total of 1.5 million passengers during the good years. Since 2015, we've had more than $40 million invested by private companies at HIA. Most significantly has been the 120-room Fairfield Inn Suites that opened in 2018. So we were very happy with that project, and that's been a big deal for us. We are part of the FedEx, UPS, DHL Global Air Network, and which accommodates approximately more than 100 million pounds of air cargo each year. Because of that, we are in the process in the very early stages of beginning the cargo expansion project, because we do have quite a bit of demand for more cargo space, which I'll explain in another slide. Key facilities at Harrisburg International, we have, it's a very kind of a small footprint for a commercial service airport of this size. It's only 750 acres, and we are wedged between the Susquehanna River and to the south, and the rail, Amtrak railroad tracks to the north. So we're kind of wedged in that little piece of land, and therefore have very little opportunity for expansion in either direction. We are home to the Pennsylvania Air National Guard, 193rd Special Operations Wing. Very proud of that. They do a wonderful job, and have been involved in many highly important military missions. Several general aviation facilities at Harrisburg International, which include our general aviation services provider, Athlete Harrisburg. We have Select Medical as their flight department located here at HIA. Rite Aid had their flight department. Is there a question?
No.
Rite Aid had their flight department located here until it was sold, and we're also home to Piedmont Airlines. We are typically self-sufficient operationally, so we do not require any support from a local tax base. We have our own fire department, police department, water and wastewater treatment facility, our own engineering team, our own marketing team, and IT specialists. I mentioned the air cargo reconfiguration project. This is an expansion project, and this is really our next significant multi-year capital improvement project. It's going to be over $64 million of expansion of our cargo complex, which will increase capacity by approximately 30%, something that's desperately needed here. The expansion is actually broken into two categories, one being the landside portion, which is that portion which is outside of the perimeter fence, basically, where there may be a processing facility or parking facilities. That part of the project is not eligible for federal assistance. And then there's the airside portion, which is primarily going to be supported by federal aviation funding in the Airport Improvement Program. That includes the runways, the taxiways, the aprons, the gates, and any area that's accessible to aircraft. We have reached out, and with the help of development, we have created a funding strategy for each component of the project, which is very complex. And our partners include the Federal Aviation Administration, the United States Economic Development Administration, PennDOT Bureau of Aviation, of course, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. We have committed our own funds as matching funds for various portions of the project. And we do expect that there'll be some private investments as well, particularly with regard to the any cargo facilities that are needed as part of the ramp expansion. The ramp expansion, again, a multi-million-dollar, multi-year project, will have a significant regional and local impact. It will enable more than $50 million in airside investment by the FAA, facilitate a 30% expansion of the air cargo apron, as mentioned, generate 529 temporary construction jobs, create 354 new permanent jobs, which will infuse over $23 million annually into the local economy, support more than $4.5 million in additional property taxes over the 20-year period, and generate almost $50 million in landing fee revenues over that 20-year period as well. So significant financial impact to the airport authority and to the region. The next slide is some emergency operations initiatives. These supported by grant funding that we've received in cooperation with our county partners, including Dauphin, York, Cumberland. 2019, $100,000 award for the purchase of a firefighting vehicle, a mini pumper, which we use for access to a parking garage. 2020, aircraft rescue firefighting equipment retrofit. This was for almost $20,000 and allows us to capture the firefighting foam, which has been deemed to contain a hazardous substance, PFOA, which called a forever chemical that is starting to be of concern for many municipalities around the nation, including here in central Pennsylvania. And most recently in 2021, the first responder station improvements for our firefighting house, almost $22,000, and this was to renovate the sleeping quarters and the restroom areas in the fire station. So, and of course, just recently we asked the Cumberland County Commissioners to provide a letter of support for a Commonwealth Financing Authority multimodal transportation fund grant in the amount of $762,000. Those grants have been announced, and we were not on the list, unfortunately. However, we will continue to submit applications for critical projects as they come up and as the grants become available. As I said a little bit the last slide, general aviation airports. Capital City Airport was acquired by the Airport Authority in 1998 when the Airport Authority was created. It was designated a reliever airport for Harrisburg International. And it's the airport of choice for several state agencies, including the Governor's Office, Pennsylvania State Police, and the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. So, and we're actually seeing quite a bit of activity over at Capital City Airport, and a lot of it is part of the flight school operation. We have 2 flight schools at Cap City, which have been actually very active even during the COVID crisis. We have acquired, since I started working here, 2 smaller general aviation utility type airports. One is Gettysburg Regional Airport that was acquired by the Airport Authority in 2006. We still own and operate that. We're in the middle of beginning a significant ramp apron construction project at Gettysburg Regional. And Franklin County Regional Airport. Franklin County was, and we acquired that in 2004. They wanted to get out of the airport business. They were looking for a public sponsor to take on that responsibility we agreed to do that, and we've been operating the airport since 2004. Kind of the same story with Gettysburg. It was privately owned, however, significant state funds had been invested for runway rehabilitation and so forth, and the state and the FAA did not want to lose the aviation asset in Adams County, so the airport authority stepped up and agreed to take that airport on as a public sponsor for Gettysburg Regional. That's the end of my presentation, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. As I said, it's been quite some time since we've had the opportunity to visit with the commissioners. The Cumberland County obviously is an important component of the airport authority, and we certainly want to be available to answer your questions or to provide any services that we can. So I'll see if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Floor's open.
I really don't have anything at the moment. Good presentation.
Gene, anything?
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I'm sorry you didn't fund it. I was hoping that was going to come in.
Yeah, no, we were too. That was for a project at Franklin County. Was it Franklin County, Rebecca?
The CFA was for the air cargo complex.
Okay, so it was part of the air cargo complex. Yeah, we were hopeful. We thought that we had a good application, but you know that it's so competitive for those grants that you're very lucky if you're able to get one. And we have received several over the years, but again, it's very competitive and a lot of good projects are on the list.
I certainly know that people appreciate that, you know, sometimes they don't have to drive to Baltimore or Philly to get on an airplane to go somewhere. So this is a really great service for the residents of Cumberland County.
Yeah, no, and particularly with COVID, we've been, if you've been to the facility at all, and you probably have, you know, it's a nice open, plenty of room for social distancing. You're not in a big crowd, whether you're waiting for the airplane or going through the security checkpoint. So it's, you know, we really tried to highlight that part of the experience here, where you're not going to be, you have plenty of room to keep your distance. And it's very clean, the restroom is clean, the floors are clean. I think people have a very feeling of safety and comfort when traveling out of Harrisburg International.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I prefer to fly out of the HIA if I can, so.
Yeah, well, thank you.
This is Jim Helsel. Gary, I think you're the only one that's still there that when I interviewed for the airport authority back in 2008 or 9, whatever that was, Gene and Vince, you weren't there at that time. I know you guys obviously through the Realtors Association, going upstairs committee and PACs and things like that, but thanks for all the support you give us. For some reason, my video is not working here, right? I'm not hiding, I just can't get my video to work. But I want to just say that as a guy who who's treasurer of a $165 million association, and as somebody who's chair of a $36 million operation like H-Lake, et cetera, and somebody who flies personally and as a passenger, I thought I knew a lot about airports. And I found out that one of the things nobody knows about airports that Tim has taught me, and I will tell you that Tim and Tim's team have taught me, and I will tell you that we're all going to have these folks as people who run our airport on a day-to-day basis, airports I should say, on a day-to-day basis. It's incredible what goes on behind the scenes. And if you'd ever like another chance to tour the facility, please give me a call. I occasionally have our board tour the facility because I think it's good that the board sees what's going on outside of what's in the boardroom. It's easy to say we're doing things on, Kim, I'll just let you highlight the dike operation, the dike repair we're doing right now as an example of one of the things we're doing that nobody even knows about it's gonna be, I think, the largest, and Kim, you have to tell me the exact word of this, but we're completely redoing the dike on the river, which is an incredible process to do. And Kim, if you just wanna give a very brief background in dollars, and that's the largest single something operation in the world. So I'll let you say what it is, but thanks so much, thanks for the support that the commissioners give us, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, what Jim is referring to is the airport is protected by a 13,000-foot long dike along the Susquehanna River, kind of an elevated levee that keeps the river away from the airport. And it's been 50-plus years since that was last rehabilitated, so we reached out to the FAA, and we were able to get a supplemental discretionary grant in the amount of $20 million to rehabilitate and basically reconstruct that flood dike. And what the method that's being used is over 6,500 articulated concrete blocks that are about 12 feet long and 8 feet wide and about 1.5 feet thick along the whole dike complex that goes from top to bottom and is all secured by concrete and it's an amazing structure. And what Jim is referring to, when it's done, is going to be the largest articulated concrete block structure in the world. And if you ever are traveling across the turnpike bridge, yeah, I couldn't think of the name, the turnpike bridge, and you look over at the airport along the river, you'll see this articulated concrete block structure. I mean, it's very clear as long as you have a second or two to glance over, and it's amazingly impressive. So, and that was almost 100% funded by the FAA and the Airport Improvement Program through a supplemental grant. So we had a project on the shelf ready to go. They had money, and that was one time when we were very successful in getting the necessary grant funding.
Articulated concrete block is the one I could not come up with in my head, but it is very impressive. And before I quiet down, I want to thank Rebecca and her whole group for what they do. They help us with a lot of grants and attempting to get grants between Rebecca and Eric Clancy and the entire development group. We use them a lot for grant writing and for our grant requests, and they've done a great job. Well, as you can hear from what Kim told us. With that, I would say thanks to the commissioners for your support, and I'll turn it back to Kim now.
Okay.
I have a number of questions and some comments as well that I think they'll be helpful, but I just wanted to, Jim, thanks for, you anticipated actually what I was going to mention, and that is, I know, I've been here long enough, I was there for the opening of the new terminal, very impressive, but one of the things that was really nice was getting the tour and really seeing behind the scenes, and a couple of things that really impressed me were the baggage handling, of course, which was very state of the art at the time. I think it's probably changed a bit since then as well. But particularly those pumps, because of that, the location of the runway and the need to manage that water level, it was very impressive to see the entire pumping system that keeps that viable. And I was really impressed with that. And I think the opportunity for my colleagues perhaps to have a behind-the-scenes tour would be something that they would enjoy and find a real value to know just how advanced that facility is there. HIA, of course, was originally Olmsted Air Force Base, so it's a very well constructed facility built for heavy use. At one time, I think the runway used to be 10,005, considered to be one of the longest runways in the United States. I think it's been maybe surpassed it down a few notches, but it's not unusual to see the aircraft that everyone knows as Air Force One doing touch and goes there. That runway is long enough that that's a regular training facility for the pilots of the executive branch air fleet. So it's an important facility, and it is an impressive facility. And I'll say too, from kayaking on that river, that stretch of the river a lot of times, it really is impressive to see how that is built up. And of course, at one time, supported some of the very largest aircraft that were part of the Air National Guard and U.S. Air Force fleets as well. So it's truly an impressive facility. We're very fortunate to have it there. Its potential is certainly enormous, especially in this day and age of logistics. So I did have a couple of questions. Let me ask you, and but I did want to make that point about a tour for everybody would be certainly, I think, a welcome thing. I want to address a number of the things regarding the general aviation airports, and there's questions. So now Gettysburg and Franklin County, as I understood it, they were essentially acquired. The state provided the money because they didn't want to lose the facility. I think Tim, you alluded to that. And so my question is, are they going to be permanent under Sarah's stewardship, or is there any thought of, would they be sold at any point? Are they going to spin them off to counties or other private owners? And are there any private management? Is Sarah managing the day-to-day there, or are they did you bring in private managers for those facilities?
Well, I'll answer the second part of that first. The airport authority does manage the day-to-day activity. We actually have a 5-member team that are positioned at Capital City Airport, and they revolve among the other 2 airports as well. So they'll go down and cut the grass in Gettysburg and drive over and cut the grass in Franklin County as well as now. So we do administer and maintain and operate both of those airports remotely. As far as it being transferred to another public entity, I would predict that that's very unlikely.
Okay.
That it will remain the airport authority, Sarah, will remain the public sponsor for both Franklin County and Gettysburg. We have received considerable amount of federal funding to support runway reconstruction and taxiway construction at both facilities. And once you take that money, you're basically obligated from that point forward to continue to operate that airport as a public entity, as a public user.
Okay.
Said differently, Gary, and Tim said it technically correct. Said differently, once we take FAA funds to do work at those airports, unless we've repaid all those FAA funds back to the FAA, we're obligated to remain there, and anybody we would sell it to would become obligated to do the same thing. So it's unlikely that it would happen.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. I was just curious about the intent there, since it was.
Don't think we ever thought about it.
What's that?
Don't think we ever thought about it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just trying to get a handle on where we're going with the future. Now, I suppose you're aware that Carlisle Airport is passing into a public situation. We actually had quite a study done here at the county level about a decade ago on whether the county would play an active role in that. At this point, the townships, South Middleton Township is going to apparently be the public entity that's taking that over. Are you in coordination with them at all, or communication with them about how that, and is there a need because of the general proximity to coordinate on an ongoing basis, or at least while this process is underway?
We have not been part of that process. We have not been in contact with anyone associated with the plan to transfer Carlisle to another form of ownership. Now, back in 2004, 2005 timeframe, there was some attempt to reach out to the airport authority to judge our interest in acquiring Carlisle. We did talk to the FAA about it. Because of its proximity to Capital City Airport, the FAA was not as supportive of providing the funding as they were for both Franklin County and Gettysburg.
Right.
So basically at that point, it kind of dropped off our radar, and we have not been approached by anyone since regarding acquiring Carlisle.
Okay, interesting analogy of dropping off our radar, because that was one of the questions I have. As they upgrade to a public facility, they're obviously planning on not only increasing the air traffic there, but the nature of the aircraft used and everything. So is there any coordination that has to occur between those airports due to the proximity? for
With
safety?
air traffic control, yeah, with air traffic control, yeah. And I mean, they're in the process now of looking at the airspace around Harrisburg International and maybe making some adjustments to increase the level of safety, particularly as it relates to Capital City Airport and other airports in close proximity to HIA.
Okay. From what I understand, from a conversation, it sounds like South Middleton's getting very close to finalizing their acquisition of it, so
Okay.
I was just curious if there was any interaction going on there. I may ask them about that further. Obviously, we have concerns regarding air safety. I'm sure the FAA is more than aware of the need to coordinate those patterns that will be there.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask also, now you had mentioned, Tim, you referred to the landlocked nature of the footprint of the facility, and I alluded to this last time we spoke a few weeks ago. So, are there any future plans on using eminent domain to take any privately owned property there? Because that was quite a brouhaha last time that came up.
Yeah, yeah. And that goes back to the Kramer parking.
Yes.
Back in 2003, 2004. The answer to your question is no.
Okay.
There's been absolutely no plans and no discussion with the airport board. Jim, you can clarify as well, as it relates to any eminent domain action.
Gary, the easier answer is that you've got a river on one side, you've got railroad track on the other side, you've got what used to be a power plant on the southern side, and we have a little bit run down that way. Some of that is floodplain, some of it isn't.
Yeah.
And if you go north, we run out of land pretty quickly, so there's not a lot of places we can go. Where we are is kind of where we are at this point in time. And we look at that all the time, and we're very careful. You've got both myself and Eric Hume, who you folks know, who's a real estate attorney, and Eric and I typically think exactly alike on this stuff, and I'm not an attorney. But we look at every single thing we do with what's it going to do long term with the remaining ground we have left, and how can we use it, is this the best way to use it, all the things go along with that. It's a tough situation in terms of expansion.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I appreciate the answer on that. Also, Tim, you mentioned, of course, about 2020 being a year it took a real hit financially, as everybody did, especially in that industry. Now, you guys have been in major expansion mode, a lot of capital improvements for quite a while. The original plan to replace the terminal was actually expanded for the number of gates and everything, well beyond what was originally planned. So I'm assuming there was a significant amount of debt obligation taken on there. Has there been any difficulty posed by the drop off in revenue? Has there had to be any restructuring of the debt obligations?
No, there has not. Our debt obligation is approximately $11 million a year. And we've been able to continue to support that. Now, last year, with the support from the federal government and the CARES Act, airports, commercial service airports around the country were included in that act for $10 billion was the amount that was provided to airports, of which Harrisburg International, or the airport authority, I should say, received almost 10 million. So we used a portion of that 10 million money, $10 million to pay, to continue to pay debt service. We basically applied as much as we had to toward debt service, which was about 4.4 million. We still had some cash on hand ourselves, so we didn't have to use it all. But if it were not for the CARES Act and that $10 million, we likely could have defaulted, but that did not happen.
Yeah, a lot of folks owe their current existence to that CARES money, so that's not surprisingly. But it sounds like you're well positioned for the recovery phase, which actually brings me to another question I hadn't planned on. And the loss of the grant is, unfortunate, of course. But in post-COVID, we're probably expecting an acceleration of the trend for this area to be very logistics heavy, and the demand for logistical capacity to simply increase. So is it's going to be very important that we be competitive in terms of the air service grants and such. So do you have any insights into why that grant wasn't awarded? And you mentioned there will be others. Are we going to be able to remain as competitive as we need to be positioned for the new role that we're going to have?
Well, again, the competition for that limited pot of money was tremendous. And Rebecca, if you're still on the phone, you're probably better best to answer that question from a grant funding standpoint.
Yeah, I can give more explanation on that. So they're not selected for the multimodal. The multimodal was one of 5 funding pieces that we were putting together for the air cargo complex. Sarah requested roughly $750,000 from the CFA, but during that same time, we applied for $2.5 million to the Economic Development Administration, so federal funds. We went after $2.5 million with that same purpose in our grant application, talking about how the area is a logistics powerhouse, the supply chain, regional supply chain, looking at post-COVID resiliency for the area, closure of PMI, those job impacts. That was all part of the EDA application. The EDA came back and said, this is exactly the type of project we want to fund. The supply chain is important in terms of post-COVID resiliency. And they actually provided Sarah a commitment of $3.7 million when the original ask was only $2.5 million. So very seldomly does a government agency offer you more money than you ask for. So they saw the value in the project. So even though the CFA multimodal was not funded, there's still sufficient funding to get the landside improvements of the air cargo underway, which is really important to that supply chain and logistics presence in the area.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, that sounds like you guys are right on top of it, so that's very encouraging. Very encouraging. Just a few more real quick. You mentioned, Tim, about the 193rd being there. As our county's been pretty active in recent years in terms of supporting a base preservation within the general region, and we have under our umbrella not only the 2 facilities that exist within Cumberland County, but we've also done a lot of work that New Cumberland benefits from there in York County, as well as the 193rd at Dauphin. We've had some conversation with those counties about getting on board and frankly pulling their weight in terms of base preservation. Of the facilities we have in the area, the 193rd is generally considered to be perhaps the most vulnerable because a lot of the facilities and their aircraft are very dated. Their mission has changed substantially in recent years, and there's a lot of questions about if we do come to a down, or when we come to the next downsizing, are they going to be viable and remain, or is that function going to get transferred to Willow Grove or somewhere else? So, we are a little concerned about the future of the 193rd, and certainly hope that Dauphin County and others will participate in that effort to be prepared for the next base realignment whenever that occurs. So, I just did want to bring up that fact that the 193rd is on our radar as well, no pun intended, but we have some concerns there as to whether there's enough being done to ensure that they remain a tenant for you.
Yeah, we certainly would hate to lose them.
Gary, just so you know, they just took over some additional land at the airport for parking purposes themselves, which was a positive sign for us, but we do watch that very carefully because they're effectively a tenant on our property.
Yeah, and they do, of course, play a substantial role employment-wise and opportunity-wise, for a lot of folks here as well. So, and they bring people here.
Right.
So, you say is it more aircraft parking space? What you're referring to?
With vehicle parking.
Just vehicle park. Okay. All right. Very good. So, are they on a lease arrangement with you, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
a long-term lease?
Okay.
That carries them to about 2070. I mean, it was a 50-year term. We just extended.
Good. Okay. Just real quick, just wrapping up here. Any further acquisitions on the radar of other airports?
No, there is not.
Okay, all right, and last question is your carriers. I mean, it's been a struggle over the years to ensure that we had, you know, a good range of carriers, especially low-cost carriers, and it seems like Harrisburg's in a good place with that. COVID, of course, put a lot of doubt in people's minds as to who's gonna survive and what routes would survive, and whether small airports would bear the brunt of any cutbacks because airlines are hurting. Obviously, they have recovery money accessibility too, but does it look like we're going to come out of this okay and retain all our carriers?
Well, that's a good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. We like to think the answer is yes. We are restructuring our airline operating agreement right now. And we're looking at ways for us to keep our cost per enplanement, our airport costs down as low as possible. We think that if we can get our airport costs within an acceptable range, we will be able to keep all our carriers, including the low-cost carriers of Allegiant and Frontier. However, there are no guarantees. Either one of those airlines can pull up stakes and move out, leave the market at any time. We understand that. That would be a critical blow to the airport authority, but it's just part of the airline service development and the airport business that you just have to understand that the airlines are highly mobile.
Sure.
And if they're not satisfied with the market, or if the costs get too high, they can move to another, they could take those assets and those resources and put them in another market.
Yeah, so, but no immediate red flags or anything that we're aware of?
No.
If you can find somebody that will pay off some of our debt service and reduce our per employment costs, we'll keep them here. That's the struggle is our debt service is the worst one of all.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all I have. I really want to thank you for indulging my questions. I think they provide some real great insights into the overall health and operation of the operation, and some good appreciation for the value it provides. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Any other questions, comments from my colleagues? Nothing. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for participating. It was very, very helpful. We'll look forward to hearing from you again. And we may be in touch about a tour.
Gary, Gene, Vince here, when you're ready to take the tour.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
I mean, we'll get the bus and running all over the place now.
Sounds
And
good.
we'll walk in the bus.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to take one.
As well.
Give me a call, Gene.
Okay.
We can do a field.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
For your time, Chris.
Absolutely. That concludes the topic of discussion, so we'll excuse everybody who's zoomed in for that specifically if they so choose. The remaining part of the meeting, we just have a couple of business items real quick. The number 4 on the agenda is other business. Did we have any additional issues that needed addressed today? Any issues commissioners wish to bring to the table? Okay, that's great. Item 5 is public comment. We make time available in every public meeting for anyone we have no public attendees online or in person, so therefore there's a public comment. And that completes everything I have, so we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Um,
We stand adjourned. Thank you.